Claude Cowork is the closest thing you can get to hiring an entire marketing team without having to go through the talent search, interviews, and adding more people to your overhead. I mean, just imagine having researchers, copywriters, advertisers, and analysts all working for you in parallel 24/7. Or imagine the people on your team having that type of power. Unfortunately, most people, and teams for that matter, are still treating Claude Cowork like a chatbot. But today, that's going to change. I'm going to show you how to maximize your output with Claude Cowork. And Anthropic's own data backs us up. Apparently, over 90% of Cowork usage isn't coding. It's actually knowledge work just like yours. In the past, when we were using AI, we focused on prompting, but not anymore. With a tool like Cowork, something so powerful, you brief it just like a team. It will plan the projects, it will split the work across parallel agents, and then it will deliver finished files into your folder. Maybe it will shoot off a Slack message for you. Regardless of if you're working on a deck, a report, strategy, brief, no matter what the task actually is. But the best part is that the team keeps working after you close your laptop and well after 5 p.m. So you can think of it like this. Chatting with AI is having a conversation. Working with Cowork is like having an entire marketing department. And in this video, I'm gonna walk you through everything you need to know to maximize your output. Everything from folder access to connectors, browser control, live dashboards that replace the weekly deck. Anything you might need to know, you will be equipped with after this video, including admin and security controls. So by the end of this video, you'll know the exact levers that you need to pull and your team needs to pull to maximize every single aspect of Claude Cowork. And with that being said, let's get into it. So here we are inside of the Claude app on desktop. I have a Mac, but it should look the exact same for you, even if you're on a different operating system. Now, you'll notice right off the bat how there is an option to go with chat or to go with Cowork. A quick rule of thumb to think about the differences here. Chat is great for one-off conversations, for brainstorming, maybe writing copy, or doing some quick research. It's essentially conversational, so you go back and forth with chatting. At this point, we've all used chatbots for probably a long time, so this doesn't need too much explanation. Cowork is where the magic begins to happen. Cowork has so many functionalities. We'll get into all those in the video, but at a high level, Cowork is agentic. You can set it on a task, it can go do it, and it can finish it for you. A couple of examples would be sending a Slack message, sending an email, doing research and creating a document, things that you could not do with just a simple chatbot. It can actually be agentic, meaning you can give it a task and it can decide the best way to execute that task. It will go do it and it will come back to you once it's done. This might take 30 seconds, it might take 10 minutes, it might take a day. It will vary from task to task. But at a high level, this is the difference between these two. Additionally, with Cowork, you can plug in to your local device, your computer. You can actually use folders that are on your computer. So it can take, whether it's a code base, whether it is proprietary knowledge and information. For me, you see Obsidian is selected. Obsidian, we won't talk about too much in this video. It's essentially similar to Notion, where I put a bunch of information in there and it acts as kind of a second brain for me. So I have my own Cowork essentially update 24/7. Anytime I have a new conversation, anytime I get a new Slack message, anytime I have a new call, it will go and update Obsidian at the moment that that conversation happens. And the reason this is important is because memory with large language models and AI is very limited and just not great, honestly. And I think it'll be a while until it gets great. So with Cowork, you can connect it to your live memory that's updated 24/7. We can talk about that in a different video, but I just want to help you understand the way that I use some of these local folders. Now, as always, from a very, very practical standpoint, you're able to select what models you want to use. In general, for me, I use Opus for almost everything. For very challenging tasks, for brainstorming, for very deep work, I like to use Fable. Sonnet is great if you just want to execute something that you know exactly what you want. You don't really want any input or feedback from the models. Apparently Opus 5 is about to come out. It doesn't matter if you're watching this video and we're on Opus 10. The principles remain regardless of the actual models that are in this video. You can also set effort levels. I would recommend always selecting thinking and just leaving that on. But you can select effort levels, so low, medium, high, extra, max. This is going to use more usage, which we'll talk about later in the video, but will also give Claude a bigger brain to go and execute the task or think about whatever it is that you want it to think about. Now, in terms of permissions, you can manually approve, automatically approve, or skip all approvals. I'm a bit risky. I do skip all approvals. If you're working with company data and information, highly recommend always having manual approval on. This is basically where Claude would just say, hey, is it okay if I do this? Maybe you're working with some very proprietary data from within the business and it's on a local folder in your device and you want it to change and make some configurations within that folder. Well, it will ask for your permission instead of just recklessly doing it. And I've heard of people deleting very precious information that they cannot get back. So I would highly recommend being careful there. Touching on pricing really quickly. So there's obviously free tiers, not going to get much use out of that. There's Pro, there's Max, and then there's Team and Enterprise. Now you can also adjust the usage on Max. So for me, I have a Max account, about $100 a month, incredible value, incredible quality. Most of you will likely be on the Team or Enterprise accounts. Just important to know how this works. Obviously, the more you pay, the more features you get, but most importantly, the more compute you get, AKA the more usage and output that you can get from Claude. Now let's dive into some of the actual features that we're going to be going through and that will serve you well if you understand how they work in the future. So to start, we go to our sidebar here and you can have pin channels, you can have projects, you can have artifacts, you can have scheduled. What does this actually mean? Well, projects are just that. It's a project where information lives within. So here we're going to do example project. We're going to go into the project and there's a couple things that you're going to need to configure. Why are projects important? Well, like I just said, memory is bad when it comes to AI. But projects are a way to kind of circumvent that memory issue. Because in here, you can add custom instructions. So for example, let's say you're a marketer. In your role, you have to do copywriting, but you also have to do some advertising, but you also have to do some public speaking. Well, projects are a great opportunity to divide and conquer. So maybe this is the copywriting project instructions. And maybe you have a secret sauce that you use for copywriting, maybe a certain cadence, a certain tone, a certain way that you communicate. Project instructions are going to be by far the best way to do this. You can come in here and you can say, you are a master copywriter. I went ahead and made up some mock project instructions so you can get an idea. This is how you would want to frame it and word it. You're the dedicated copywriter for North Star AI, a company I made up, an enterprise software company that helps large marketing organizations use AI to plan campaigns, analyze performance, create content, manage brand governance, and automate complex workflows. This is how you want to talk to the project. You want to tell it who it is. You want to tell it what its role is. You want to tell it, in this case, since this is a project for copywriting, you want to talk about brand positioning. You want to talk about what the core message is, who the audience is, and just as much context and information as you possibly can. So the brand voice, it should sound like this. The writing should feel like this. The brand should never sound overly promotional, breathless, casual, abstract. What's the tone? You should use a confident but measured tone. Clear use cases. You want to have writing principles. So the point is, the project instructions is your opportunity to customize the output that Claude is going to give you for this specific project. So if I was to save these instructions and work with it, the output is going to sound a lot different than it would sound if I was just working within Claude Cowork in general, not inside of this project. This is a very important distinction to understand because projects are where you're going to kind of divide and conquer with your work. Once you have saved the instructions, over time, the memory will update as you have conversations in here. You can also add context. So you can add PDFs, documents, or other text to reference in this project. And every single time that you put something into this chat box and it runs, before it gives you a reply, it's going to run through the instructions, it's going to run through the memory, and it's going to run through the context. Why is this important? Well, once again, if you're just doing general copywriting inside of the chatbot, you'll get very general output. But if you're inside of your copywriting project, you're going to get very fine-tuned specific output in the format, in the tone, and in the branding style that you actually want. So you can see why this is such a big deal and such a big sticking point for using projects. Let's talk a little bit about some of the outside features that Claude has. Now, what do I mean by outside? Well, if you go to the Customize tab, you're going to see some very interesting things here. What I want you to focus on right now are connectors. So connectors are just that. They're essentially third-party tools that act as plugins into Claude. As you can see, as a marketer myself, I use Canva, Clay, ExcaliDraw, Figma, Granola, I use Notion. I use all of these different tools to help myself become a better marketer. And there's probably even more that I'm not using that I should be using. For example, I use Atlassian. I use several of their products. I should connect this. You can see what's connected, you can see what is not connected, and you can see all of them. As a matter of fact, they have an entire connector marketplace. If you want to add some, all you need to do is go to Browse Connectors. There's hundreds of connectors, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but put it this way. If there's a tool that you are using for your marketing, for your business, for your job, for the work you're putting out there, there's probably a connector for it as well. And I would recommend, if you have an account on Trello, add that connector. It's quite simple. All you have to do is just click it and you sign in, and it uses an MCP connector and you connect it. I'll show you how to actually call that connector in just a minute. But if you want to look at plugins, these are a little bit different. So connectors are basically third-party businesses that connect into Claude. Plugins are a little bit different. So these are designed in large part by Anthropic and sometimes partners. They have a productivity plugin, a marketing plugin, data, sales. And what this is this is essentially a skill that is created by this company. We'll talk about skills in a minute. Let's just look at the marketing one, just for example. This helps you create content, plan campaigns, analyze performance across marketing channels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can ask it these questions, and it has a bunch of different skills in here that come together to help with this output. Now, if I was trying to play devil's advocate and say, well, what's wrong with this? In my opinion, if you're using the generic marketing plugin from Anthropic, what kind of output do you think you're going to get? You're going to get the same output as other people that are using that same plugin. Not saying don't try it, not saying don't use it, because in my experience, I actually have gotten pretty good results before, but you should just be careful and you should be thoughtful about when you initiate using these external plugins. Like I said, you can also see plugins from partners, and you can even create personal plugins if you want. Now, skills. Let's talk about skills really quickly, because this is probably one of my favorite things that I use in Cowork. So you can create skills, or you can use skills created by Anthropic or by third parties. Now, for example, let me just show you really quickly. Skills are so easy to use, and the way that I frame it is that if you have a workflow that you repeat more than 2 or 3 times in a day or in a week, you should make a skill out of that workflow. For example, I create a lot of visual assets inside of Gemini's Nano Banana. It's a great tool to create marketing collateral, but the problem is it's really hard to get consistent output from Nano Banana. And so what I did is I created a Nano Banana skill. And so let's just say I want to create a graphic about how funnels work and why top of funnel is most important. Can you help me brainstorm this concept and then give me a prompt to use in Nano Banana? To initiate skills, all you do is hit slash. So I have a skill that I created called the NB skill, and it'll do just that. With that, the way you create skills is quite simple. You can literally just say, make a skill out of this. So let's use an example. Let's say that you are focused on writing every Monday. You have to write new ads for Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads or Google ads, whatever it might be. And you do this over and over and over and over again. It's getting a little bit old having to repeat the prompts and add the context. What you can do after you've completed a session of creating those ads or creating that copy, whatever it is, you can just say, hey, can we make a skill out of this? Claude will literally analyze this conversation and previous conversations, and it will make a skill based on the workflow that it's had to do each time you wanted to work through this problem. And so in the future, all you'd have to do is say, use the advertising skill, help me create 6 new concepts based on this project that we're doing or this brief that I have. And what it allows you to do is just shortcut the work that you actually need to do inside of prompting and making sure that you have all the inputs exactly right. And you can just kind of cavalier it and just do exactly what I did here. I want to create this graphic. I want to do X, Y, and Z. I want you to use this skill to do it. But if I didn't have this skill already there, I would have to explain so much more about what we're doing, why we're doing it, the output we want, how to configure the output we want. It's just a much larger headache. But now the output is going to be a lot more relevant. Now, in this example, in the skill, I normally upload reference images. I did not do that here. So I'm not exactly sure how well the output will be on this example, but the point is skills are incredibly valuable. I mean, if you just look at some of the skills I have, this is just a couple of them. Fable Orchestrator we'll definitely talk about, but LinkedIn captions, LinkedIn carousels, LinkedIn skill, generate high engagement LinkedIn posts for Sam's automation content. Use the skill whenever Sam asks for a LinkedIn post. So as you can see, just a ton of examples here. And the way you pull up a skill is just by hitting the / command and it pulls right up. Or you can just say in plain English, use X skill and let's get it done. Now let's just check the output on this. It kind of gave me some reasoning behind its logic, and it gives me 3 possible directions. It recommends I take concept 1 as the hero, and then boom, it gives me the prompt. Once again, saving me a ton of time having to configure this. Let's talk about a couple other things that are very important for you to know before we dive into actual work with Claude Cowork. So there's the artifacts tab, which is incredible. Basically, when you create collateral, it will create artifacts out of them. So maybe it's a document, maybe it's a PDF, maybe it's a graphic. But the cool thing is you can share a lot of these artifacts with other people if you want to. And we can just do a very quick example just to kind of demo how this works. Please create an artifact about Claude Cowork that I can show to demonstrate how useful it is for enterprise marketing teams. It'll work on this for a minute. Yes, you can use the folder. But basically what this is going to do, it's going to create an artifact that's almost like a document that I can share. If you think about the concept of Google Drive, you can share documents, spreadsheets, etc. You copy that link, you send it to other people. Artifacts are the same way. It can be a private artifact just for yourself, or it can be public that you can share with anyone. Now, while it is building our artifact, we decided to do one on campaign content production in the format of a scrollable landing page. Let's just check on the schedule tab. So right now, if I was in my personal Claude, I'm in my work one right now, you would see about 10 different scheduled tasks. And this is basically something that you can have run on autopilot. So a couple examples of what I use personally in my life is a 7 a.m. morning brief. And what this does is it looks at the past 24 hours of my calls, my Slack messages, my emails, my notes, my conversations with Claude. It combines all of them and it sends me a Slack message with my priorities, with my to-do list, and my updates. And it's quite simple to set up. You can literally set up a scheduled task for anything. As you see here, there's some examples: meeting prep, daily brief, which is essentially what I put together, content ideas, weekly review, inbox triage, or monitor a topic. So let's say that you have a specific keyword that you're making a campaign about. What we would necessarily do is we would click create a scheduled task. It says I want to set up a scheduled task. It's just going to briefly explain how these tasks work. And then I want to figure out what I'd like Claude to do and how we should run it. A really cool thing about Claude is it will kind of ask you some questions to guide you through creating what you want. So what do you want the scheduled task to actually do each time it runs? A quick web search of keywords to make sure I am not missing anything relevant for my campaigns. By the way, you never have to correct your spelling inside of talking with AI. How often should it run? Every day. What time of day should it fire? Early, 6 to 7 a.m. Want a notification when it ends? Send me a Slack DM. It's probably going to ask me another question about what kind of keywords do we want to target, but let's let it work through and let's see. Yeah, so 2 things I need to nail down before I build this. The keywords are the whole point, and the Slack DM needs a destination. So I'm not going to answer this here because this is just an example, but basically what I would do, actually, why don't we just answer it? So keywords equal meta ads, LinkedIn ads. I'm just making this up. It could be anything, and it's probably not the greatest example, but meta ads, LinkedIn ads, anything related to digital advertising that is a big deal or change. Slack should go to my personal DM, Sam. Okay, let's let it work on that. And as you can see, it kind of tagged these examples in here. All right, and so I gave it the customer information and it is working on setting up this task. We'll come back and revisit this. Let's check out the artifact that we wanted. So, perfect. So here we go. As you can see, Cowork for Marketing. Give your marketing team an agentic teammate that ships the whole campaign. See it build a campaign, why enterprises trust it. So you can actually add agentic actions in here. This is really, really, really cool. You saw I basically gave it hardly any sort of info to actually create this. And so it's walking us through all these examples. And this is basically my brief for this video turned into an artifact. And so if I want, I can share this with people. I can copy it and make a website out of it. I can pretty much do whatever I want. And so let's go ahead and create this artifact. And then from there, I'll be able to share it however I want, with whoever I want, whenever I want. And just like that, our artifact is complete. Pretty simple, honestly, and pretty cool. So let's check in now on our scheduled task. Slack is connected. I have your target DM. Boom. Okay, so yeah, all I would have to do now is click schedule and it will create it. As I told you, I'm already running this in a different account, so I'm not going to create it here. But if I did, all I need to do is click schedule, and then I can go into the scheduled tab, and it's pretty much going to be rocking and rolling. Okay, so let's jump back into the main Claude interface. As we discussed, for just simple conversations or questions, you can just use chat. It's very basic. You can still use plugins and connectors with chat. But for me, 99% of the time, I'm working inside of Cowork just because I find it to be more effective, quite frankly. And so as I mentioned, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're connected to the right folder inside of your desktop. Now, that's going to vary from person to person, but I would recommend having organized folders based on the work you're doing so that it always has context that it's pointed towards. And maybe you have different folders. So in the same way that we said projects can serve different purposes, folders can essentially do the same thing, because you can have a folder for copywriting, a folder for advertising, a folder for new briefs, a folder for seasonal campaigns, and so on and so forth. And the more you have inside of these local folders, the more that Claude has access to actually work with. And at a very simple level, you can just say, hey, go to this folder and organize it, clean it up, and delete old files. But where the real value comes is the knowledge and the context that is actually inside of those folders. As I suggested, you have to be very careful about your approval process if you're working inside of your local folders. But the way that we just did an artifact is a great example. So if you have a local folder about a specific thing that you're working on, you can have it turn that folder into a website. It can turn it into a spreadsheet. It can turn it into a Word doc. It can turn it into a graphic or a visual. There's so many ways you can repurpose and reuse the context in that folder to make it more visual, to make it more digestible, easier to understand, whatever the case is. There's so many things you can do there. And that is the power of pointing to the right folders on your computer. Now, one other very important thing about using local files is that it basically condenses the context that AI has to work with. If you're not familiar, AI has what's called a context window. And in layman's, basically, the more information that it has to process, the worse the output is going to be. Now, it can contain a lot of context before it starts breaking down, but you'd be surprised how quickly that knowledge and that output starts degrading over time. And so this forces it to be focused. Instead of digesting its entire memory base about what you have, instead of going through all of the files on your computer and all of the folders, it is this specific folder that it is working within. So it will digest the context a lot more efficiently without actually breaking down the output. You want to always be aware of your context that you're using. And with that, if you have a very long conversation that's been going on, a lot of back and forth between yourself and with Claude, probably a good idea to refresh and start from a fresh chat. The reason for that is that, once again, the more context, the more inputs and the more outputs, the lower the quality. Now, you don't have to be OCD about this and switch it out after one prompt or one message, but you will notice a degradation in the output of quality from Claude the longer running your conversations actually are. So having it pointed at a simple folder or file condenses that context window and allows for more specific high quality output. Now, if you didn't know, Claude is a really good researcher. So if you're trying to do some work and you're trying to understand more about that work, there's a couple different ways that you can go about doing this. We're going to switch over to the chat tab, which, like I said, is slightly different, but pretty similar all in all. And we can do research. So if you click research, essentially what it's going to do is, instead of just quickly scanning the web and giving you a reply, it's going to take its time. It might take 20 minutes, it might take 30 minutes, it might take an hour, but it will do a comprehensive research report and give it back to you. So for this example, we could say, I need to understand the top 3 places to do digital advertising for the enterprise that I work for. We are focused on, just making this up once again, cold weather markets, as we are doing a seasonal campaign about holiday travel. And what you'll notice is the output will not be the same as if I was to just put in a chat. So it's going to think about it. It's going to kind of reason about what I'm actually asking. And then it's probably going to ask me some questions to clarify before we actually jump into the research. Okay, as you can see, I'll dig into this properly, but a few details would send the research into genuinely different directions. So let's lock those down first. As I said, it'll ask you some questions. And then once I give it an answer to these questions, it will then start the research. And this research will be very comprehensive and it will take a long time. So you can just go work on other tasks while it's doing that research. But as a marketer, gosh, this is such a powerful tool. And you might think that, hey, I can just put a prompt into Claude and I can get all the research I need. The depth of research from actually clicking the research tab makes all the difference in the world. So sure, if you're asking the score of a game or a good restaurant in the area you're in, by all means, just go into chat. But if you want to actually dive deep, you want to look through reports, you want to go through different websites, you want to understand as much as you possibly can, I cannot recommend the research tab enough. Two of the most powerful features inside of Cowork that I cannot stress enough, I use these every hour of the day basically, are Chrome use and computer use. So if you're a Chrome user, you install the Claude plugin into Chrome, and you can say something like, obviously we need to be in Cowork. Can you go into my Chrome? Here's a good example. So I have been hiring some people for a role that I needed to hire for, and I'm using Upwork for that. Can you go into Chrome, open Upwork, and review the applicants of the school job posting? Give me your top 3 applicants. The interesting thing about this is I need to hire a community manager for one of my school communities. And I had a bunch of people apply. Well, I don't want to go through all of those applications. That would take forever. So instead, what I can do is I can have Claude open up Chrome, open up Upwork by itself, and start going through all of these job posts. I mean, this is crazy. This is basically, like I said at the beginning, it's an assistant. It's a 24/7 agent that works for you on your behalf. And so we'll give it a moment. As you can see, it's already opened a new tab inside of Chrome. Let's open it up just so we can follow along, and let's see what it does. And the way that it works is it reasons and thinks for a little bit, and then it takes action. So you can just go about your day, do your work, eat your lunch, whatever you need to do, while Claude is actually executing on your behalf. And also it will ask you, because I changed this to manual, like I said, for me, I always do skip all approvals. So I'm just going to go ahead and initiate that here. Allow for this website. So you just need to make sure that you approve it, especially if it's sensitive or, you're going into some sort of infrastructure or setup that you need to be very careful with what Claude actually does. Let me take a screenshot to see the current state of the page. And so the URL was a 404 error. Let's see if it can figure it out though. You can see Claude's mouse begin to work and essentially debug the browser. I'm not actually logged into Upwork right now, which I did on purpose because I just want to see. What it's going to do is it's going to basically ask me, hey, can you log into Upwork? And then from there, I can actually execute. So could you switch to the Chrome window and log in? So that didn't work. Let me do the actual login. So username, and then I'll do password. Cool. So we're logged in. You see school community engagement. That's fantastic. And when ranking the school applicants, what should I prioritize? Well, we can do relevant experience and proposal quality and track record. Boom. Okay. So now what it's going to do is it's going to go through all of these and it's going to open them up. It's going to look through each proposal. I mean, it's really quite cool. It's kind of crazy, actually. So let me check whether the login has gone through it yet. You're logged in. I can see it. I mean, it's kind of cool because it's giving you live action updates into what it's actually doing. So it's going to be working through here. And this will probably take, I don't know, might take 20 minutes. It might take 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes longer than others, but it's on the applicant page and it's going to do all of it for me. I mean, that's absolutely wild. So while it is doing that, let's work on the computer use because that's also something really cool. Can you open Microsoft Excel and create a spreadsheet with the column titles as follows? Keywords, campaigns, briefs, pain points. Okay, let's see what it has to do. And let's check in on the progress on Chrome while it's doing that. So yeah, it's still going through all of these different applicants, kind of reviewing what they had to say. It's going to check it out and just, kind of see, is this someone that we'd want to work with? Is this someone that we don't want to work with? And we'll take it from there. Now, let's see what it does after it's finished thinking about our computer use request. Okay, so now not only is Claude using Chrome, but it's also going to be taking over my Microsoft Excel. And this got brought out of the picture. Let me just bring this in so you can see it. So this is what Claude's doing on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, you can see Microsoft Excel. So it says blank workbook selected. Let me click create. And so Claude will click create and you can see, boom, it opened this up and it's literally no hands here at all. It's doing it for me. It's working through a blank workbook is selected. Now let me create the headers. Boom, it did that. So these are very simple examples, but you can understand how you could extrapolate these to larger examples. So, just a couple of ideas, like if you're using Google Analytics and you're trying to go through and figure out what do these analytics mean, you can have it take over your browser or take over your computer, go through all of it, and then update you on what's working, what keywords are working, what keywords are not working. And you can just see how powerful this is. I mean, these are just two very, very, very specific workflows that it could possibly use all the while it's working while I'm talking. And you can extrapolate this out to all of the work that you might want to do within your organization. Now let's check back in on our job applicants and see where we're at. So I read all 20 proposals in full. Here are my 3, weighted the way you ask. Boom. Just like that. All the info. Now, instead of going through all 20 applicants, I can look at the shortlist and I can decide, is this someone I want to work with or not? And it even included honorable mentions. And it said why I'd skip or who I would skip despite big numbers, and it includes why. So once again, this is something that would have taken me at minimum an hour. It only took me probably 3 minutes, and I didn't even have to do it actually. Claude did all of it. So this is a great example of both computer use and Chrome use. Something that just changed inside of Claude is now you can use Cowork in the cloud. And you can see in the top right-hand corner for this task, you can run it in the cloud or you can run it in the computer. In the cloud, it will continue to run even when you close the app. But if you run it on the computer and you close your laptop, it stops running. On the cloud, the advantage is obviously you can go on the phone and you can continue the session. So this is brand new, really cool. Before you could only run it on your computer and it was very limiting unless you had an always on device, which not many of us have because we use laptops. But what if you're trying to explain something to someone and you're just having a lot of trouble? Well, let me take you through a live example. So I just posted this in here and below are my notes for this video. And I said, I'm making a video on the following and I want you to create graphics or something of the sorts, giving it the freedom to expand if it needs to accurately demonstrate and show off what I'm referring to. Now this section is all about admin, security, and governance. So let's go ahead and see what it comes up with. I'll let it think for a little bit and then we'll see what the output looks like. In true Claude fashion, it just asks straight up, what kind of graphic do you want for this session? Or segment, excuse me. Interactive admin console mockup, set of feature cards, animated explainer sequence. Let's just go with the first recommendation just to keep things simple. What aspect ratio are you cutting this into? We're doing 16:9 landscape. What visual style should I match it to? Of course, we should do Anthropic because this video is all about Claude. So let's let it work for a minute. We'll come back and review. All right, it took about 10 minutes and now we got our output. So let's take a look at the artifact that was created for us to explain enterprise governance. So just for example, there are a couple different things. Well, first of all, let's just take a look at this artifact, right? So it created this, it used our example of Northwind Labs, which is not a real company. It broke it down by different parts of the org and how you can set it up. So for example, you can look at your members and groups when you're using Claude. You can identify their roles and access. A lot of this is very similar to how you would set up something like Google Cloud or Microsoft Cloud. You can set spend limits. You can manage the connectors that certain people are using. You can focus on who's sharing what. And most importantly, you can enforce your security when you're using the Claude admin console. So you can also check out the usage analytics that people have access to, and you can see who's using what, what's getting used the most by your team. And this really is a cool way to, once again, you can toggle it on and off, but this is a really cool way to just get deep into the details of what your team is actually doing. It's also worth noting that if you are using Claude Cowork, you have access to Claude Code. Claude Code is incredibly powerful, but it's really no different than Cowork. It's for developers. Cowork is essentially the same thing, but for knowledge workers, aka the work that we are all doing here. Now, there's one other very important thing I need you to understand about how to maximize the output with Claude and Claude Cowork, and that is sub-agents. So if you think about it, when you're chatting with an LLM, you're going back and forth with one instance, but agents can create sub-agent. Now, there's one very important feature that I need to walk you through before we conclude this video, and that is agents and sub-agents. So Claude has the ability, if you think about talking with a chatbot. You're going back and forth with one LLM technically. But Cowork has the ability to spawn agents and sub-agents. And so I have a cool example for you here. This is a long brief that I put together, but essentially you are a campaign director, a lead orchestration agent. Your job is to turn the launch brief below into complete review-ready B2B campaign by delegating it to specialized sub-agents. Use your sub-agent's task/tool to run these agents in parallel wherever their work is independent. Do not write assets yourself. So I'm going to trigger this, but I just want you to know that you don't have to be this direct when you are wanting to spawn multiple agents. Maybe you're doing research, maybe you're working on a project, whatever the work is that you're actually doing, you can just say, please spawn agents and sub-agents to handle this task, and it will do that accordingly. And so what you're gonna see, after it's done thinking about the context of the prompt that I just gave it, you will start to see these agents come into play, and it will spawn them, and it'll show you what they're working on in real time live. So after thinking about the task, it says, here's the plan and execution order. Here's wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, and the director assembly. And so these agents are going to be handling these different waves in these different tasks. And another reason why this is important is the context windows. Like we talked about earlier, there is a finite context window that we have to use to our advantage. These sub-agents can have their own individual context so that they don't get tripped up and confused by what another agent's working on. If one agent was to handle all of these tasks, by the time it got to wave 3, the quality would degrade so much it wouldn't even be usable. But by using sub-agents, we can withhold that context and we can scale in parallel so that it can do and handle all of these tasks accordingly. And so it's actually running these agents now on the back end, and it's going to handle them from agent 1, agent 2, agent 3, and so on. So it is just updated and it says dispatching wave 1 foundation agents in parallel. Well, now it's running 2 agents, and you can see agent 1 is doing a competitive positioning analysis, and it's searching the web. Agent 2 is going to perform audience insight analysis. This is a perfect example. Instead of having one agent handle both of these things, it's splitting the task out to sub-agents to preserve the quality, to speed up the work that's actually being done. So not only are we improving the quality, but we're increasing the speed of the work being done because it is being divided amongst sub-agents. And so right now, this is for wave 1, and it'll do the same thing for wave 2, and it'll do the same thing for wave 3. You can see it's multitasking, you can see it's thinking, and these are the tasks that it's running. Once these tasks are done, it will initiate wave 2, and it will spawn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many it deems appropriate agents to tackle that task. And this is something I use for almost everything that I do inside of Cowork. It is so powerful and so effective, I cannot even explain it to you. Another thing that I'd like to touch on really quickly is Slack. So if you use Slack, if you use Teams, if you use Gmail, if you use email, Cowork is the place to be, right? So can you review my Slack for the last 24 hours and let me know what I'm missing? Let me know that conversation I had with Jeff, what the deliverables are there. You can basically just have it go check everything you need to instead of you combing through each Slack conversation or you combing through each email. Now, I handle this in the form of, once again, scheduled tasks, but you can do this manually or you can schedule them. So that's just something that you really need to keep in mind as you are able to use all of these tools and what they're calling headless. Headless just means that you don't actually have to go in and look through the UI of the product or service. You can ask Claude to go handle all of that and do it for you. And as you can see, it's still running these agents. It ran these 2 agents. They completed their task. Both foundation agents delivered, synthesizing the message now. Once it synthesizes that message into a core narrative, it will spawn wave 2, which is production. So spawn all 6 asset builders in parallel. So it's going to spawn a launch blog agent, an email nurture agent, an organic social agent, paid ads, and so on. And you can just see kind of the structure and the way that it's running here. So any moment now, it's going to start spawning these agents now that it's synthesized the information and should output them for us shortly. As you can see, it's launching a couple agents. It's going to launch 4 more in addition to these. And this is how you tackle a bunch of work very quickly. So at the end of the day, this is everything you need to know about Claude Cowork, how to maximize it for your business and for your organization. If you're a marketer, this is truly a weapon that you can use to 10x your output without needing to add people into your overhead, without having to ask for help. You can tackle roughly 10x the work of what you could initially. And the key is making sure that you're using all of the different aspects of Claude Cowork efficiently. So you can do skills, you can customize them, you can make sure that you're scheduling tasks, you can make sure you're creating artifacts, you can make sure that you're plugged into the right local files. All the things in this video are going to be relevant for the foreseeable future. And if you're a business looking to add AI into your workflows, into your enterprise marketing groups, into your campaigns, definitely check out the description. We put a link in the bio where you can schedule a call with Alefic, because we've worked with Fortune 500 companies across the board for several years, helping them cut costs, increase productivity, increase efficiency without necessarily needing to add overhead, all through the magic of AI. If you haven't yet, make sure to like and subscribe, because we have several more videos coming for enterprise marketing teams on how to maximize their AI use in the business. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.